All right, good morning, everybody. It's a little bit late here this morning, 5:49 a.m. And thanks for folks who are up early and tuning in this morning. Of course, it's been kind of a windy night. We've had some tornado warnings across parts of South Florida, but Ian is bearing down on Southwest Florida. I'm going to give you an update on that. First off, if you like the video, and there's a bunch of them I've been doing now on Ian, be sure to like, subscribe, and get the notification button. All right, let's get right to it because there's not much time now before the hurricane core arrives on the southwest coast there, and it is going to be a very, very bad day, and I'm afraid to say, because this is going to be a big, probably a historic as well as generational hurricane event. It's going to be a big bunch of weeks, if not months, if not years, of recovery afterwards. I always say that the preparation, the run-up to a hurricane is very stressful. There's a lot of anxiety. Going through the hurricane is terrifying, and the recovery, it seems like it's never ending. And all those things are unfolding here with this Category 4 Hurricane Ian this morning that is getting closer to the coast. Let's zoom in now. I've got what I do is I plot the 24-hour position from the National Hurricane Center on there with the previous track, and you can see, and I'll zoom on in here so it shows up a little bit better. So you can see Ian has made some wobbles here during the night. In fact, a wobble to the left, which is kind of interesting there. Kind of a wobble left and then a jog, and now kind of heading back on a course here. So this is why yesterday when we were talking about the threat to Tampa, I was saying that you can't really totally rule it out until the storm has passed. Now the threat is lower, but what you don't want to have here now is that Ian makes these kind of what I would think are a little bit surprisingly leftward jogs, which is where you start working back left of the track there and kind of somehow run up the coast. We're going to get into this area here, and it's starting to already happen. It looks like where the steering winds are starting to break down a little bit. So the steering, it's kind of like when you let go of the wheel if you're driving really, and you're slowing down, and the car kind of like maybe wanders along the road. So that's a little bit the effect of that's going to be happening to Ian in terms of the overall steering currents. Regardless, if Tampa Bay doesn't get the storm surge part from the center going in over or north of the bay, there is a huge flood and rainfall threat that's occurring now throughout central Florida, and that does go into the Tampa Bay area as well. You can see it there, just torrential amounts of rain, and this is going to last all day today, all night tonight, into tomorrow. So this event is continuing to unfold for Tampa as well as central Florida, and then we've got the wind threat here as well. Now there's the core of the storm, and let's do this because I did this last night. So what happened was Ian had a diameter, an eye diameter of about 18 miles wide, and then during the afternoon and evening hours, Ian went through what we call an eyewall replacement cycle, where a new eye formed around the inner eye. We call it an outer eye, and that outer eye then starved out the inner eye, and then the outer eye, the bigger eye, became the new eye. Hurricane hunters this morning reporting that the diameter of the new eye is double of what the old eye was. So now we're at about a 32 to 34 mile wide eye, which means that the hurricane force winds around that eye and the core has also doubled in size. So it's really, I honestly couldn't think of a worst case scenario in terms of a hurricane approaching. You know, you never want to be hit by a Category 4, but a lot of times the Category 4s, when they're in their initial rapid intensification stage, they are they're relatively small in terms of their diameter, so it's very destructive, but it's not quite as expansive. And unfortunately, in this case, I'm afraid that this is going to be both destructive and expansive. If you kind of take the left side of the eyewall there, and that doesn't really, I need to almost move that line over a little bit, don't I? Because that doesn't quite get all of that eyewall edge. Let me get the eyewall edge here. Let me stop the loop for a second. That'll make it easier. So if you take the left side and you run it right up the coast there, and you take the right side and you run it up the coast there, you can see many communities will be impacted here. Basically going over Port Charlotte, Fort Myers, down as far south as Naples. Naples is going to be on the edge of the eyewall here. Bonita Springs, on up through Coral Springs, not Coral Springs, I'm sorry, Coral, let me zoom in here so I can see. This is one of the effects of an early morning storm tracking here. So we can talk about some of these communities here that are in the path of that. Lehigh Acres, Fort Myers, Cape Coral, that's what I'm thinking of, Port Charlotte, on up to the north there, and probably just even into Sarasota could see the edge of the core there. And there's Tampa Bay there, so let's draw that line on the left side here, which basically paralleling it is going to just skirt Tampa Bay there. So a very bad situation for the southwest coast unfolding as we go through the day. So let's talk about the southeast coast here. Now, there's not as big of a feeder band or a moisture field that's going in. That has seemed to kind of rotate around the north part of the storm. There's kind of the primary feeder band off to the east there, but we're still going to be in some very strong winds here, especially when these squalls move through. We're going to see gusts over 50 miles an hour in South Florida, Southeast Florida, as well as the Keys. We've had considerable amount of storm surge also as we've gone through the night in the Keys. Let's loop that again. And let me show you where we stand right now in terms of the threats. We have the tornado watch that has been reissued now, and that is going to be continuing through the day today. That's in effect until 5 p.m. So it doesn't include the Keys anymore, but it does include Miami-Dade and Broward. That is a 6 a.m. tropical cyclone update, which we will take a look at in just a second here in detail. And so there's the tornado threat. There is the flood threat in that kind of light purple area there, the magenta area there, 15 to 20 inches, and that's a huge swath right across Tampa Bay and south all the way across the center of the state, I-4 corridor, and up to Jacksonville. So this is going to be an enormous flood threat. In fact, it's that high risk of flash flooding there for the middle of the state and moderate for the rest of the state. All right, let's get to the advisory because I know everybody wants to kind of see where is it now and where is it going. That's one of the things that we want to push to the top here. And so this is going to be the 5 a.m. track, but the 6 a.m. update that just came in. You heard that little chime there in the background. So 140 mile an hour winds, and it's according to the observations from the hurricane hunters that have been out there this morning. Category 4, moving to the northeast at 10, and the pressure now down to 941 millibars. So it's getting very low, and later this morning I'll show you what the pressure relationship is to damage, because when the pressure drops down into the 940s and 930s, the damage scale gets higher and higher when the storm makes landfall, when the storm reaches the coast. There you can see the tropical storm conditions already extending inland there, the hurricane conditions just offshore. So not a lot of time to complete, there's no time to complete preparations. Basically, the storm is practically here for all intents and purposes. So here we go forward now into our first point there. There is 2 p.m. this afternoon. So the storm, the hurricane force winds of the core have already come ashore. The center is coming ashore, and it's the hurricane conditions basically, they're into the Tampa Bay area as we go into the afternoon and evening hours, and as far south as Naples, as far north as Tampa Bay, and then as we go into the evening hours, there is overnight tonight, and the hurricane conditions pushing up US 17, similar to what Charlie did, except this time nearly twice as big, if not bigger, in terms of the destructive potential. And unfortunately, with bigger hurricanes, they're slower to weaken just because of their size. They're more resistant to wind shear and things like that. And then we go into Thursday morning and Thursday afternoon. So there's a Thursday afternoon position there. So this is going to be a massive power outage, tree down, flooding, just a really bad event. There's going to be some structural damage to homes where the core comes ashore and coming inland there. So that is just a big strike through the center of Florida there with destructive hurricane potential. And then going forward there, you can see it turns up the coast and heads on up into Georgia there. Still, there's the possibility of some hurricane force winds along the east coast as well. So really, nobody in central Florida is out of the woods. There are the hurricane warnings this morning, and you can see they include Orlando. They go down to the western shores of Lake Okeechobee. Naples, as well as all of Collier County, is in the hurricane warning area, and it extends up the coast through Lee County, Fort Myers, DeSoto, Hardy counties on the west coast there, as well as Sarasota, Polk County, also the Tampa Bay area, so Pinellas and Hillsborough County with the hurricane warning. The South Florida area, we still have the possibility, as I said, of tornadoes. There's going to be some gusty winds. The storm surge is starting to go down in the Keys, and I can show you that. Pretty impressive storm surge in the lower Keys this morning. And let me see if this will capture it there. No, that's not going to capture it. This will capture it. So there is the Key West tidal information, and right there, that was around midnight. It was the time of high tide, and there was about 2 feet of storm surge in Key West. Now, 2 feet of storm surge, it doesn't take much storm surge in Key West. You can see that blue line there, that's the predicted, and the red line there, that was the actual. We can go up the coast here a little bit and see what the storm surge values now are up at Naples. And what's happening is that Naples, because right now there's mostly an offshore flow, the water values are going down, and unfortunately they will come rushing in when the other side of the hurricane comes. So what's happening now is what we call a drawdown, where the water is being pulled away from the coast. One more area here, that is up by Port Charlotte, and you can see there's a drawdown there as well. The water is now below where it should be. It's even below the normal low tide level there. Let's check Tampa Bay real quickly here. Okay, so this is St. Petersburg, and what we can see is the water starting to draw down in Tampa Bay. We'll go farther up into Tampa Bay, and the water, yes, coming down there too. So all these things kind of unfolding here this morning. Once again, I think in the Tampa Bay area, the flood threat from the rainfall is very significant. There's the latest storm surge warnings, and storm surge watch continues for the rest of the Keys this morning, and that's kind of the way things shape up this morning. So I can see there's lots of people up already. Let's see what you folks are thinking this morning. There's the core, by the way. It's not often that you show a South Florida radar and there's a a big Category 4 like that just sitting off the coast. So good morning to all the folks watching from Northport. Oh boy, Northport, you're gonna have a bad day, I'm sorry to say. Let's see who else is watching. So how quickly does the storm start to break down once it reaches the coast? So there's a thing that's called the decay cycle of the hurricane, and let me see if I can find it here. And if you look at all the models, one of the things that we look at is called the D-ship, DSHPS on the models. And the D-ships shows, and I think I can find it here, so let me do that while I'm talking about it. Because the D-ships is what's called the Statistical Hurricane Intensity Prediction System. That's what SHIPS stands for, the acronym. And the D-ships is what's called the decay ships. So it basically calculates the decay of the storm, how it's going to be weakening. And so here is the D-ships, and let me show you if we can find that line here. And in fact, let me make sure my cursor is using the right color here so you guys can see it better. Okay, so in here, there's the ship right there. The D-ship's going to be one of these that goes down pretty quickly. There it is right there. So so basically that's the D-ship. So there is the where the center comes ashore at landfall in 12 hours. So that's this afternoon. And then in 24 hours, so that's tonight, the D-ship is already showing it winding down from, the ship model only had a Category 3, so it'll be winding down from Category 4. The D-ship looks pretty fast there because it brings it down into tropical storm strength. There's the Hurricane Center's official forecast. So they're, of course, calling for Category 1 through 24 hours here. So Category 4, when it makes landfall and comes ashore, then Category 3, Category 2 to Category 1 in a period of 12 hours there. So that's kind of the decay there. Good morning to all the folks saying good morning. As I was saying off the top here, if you're joining me now, unfortunately, this is going to be a generational event for many in Florida on the southwest coast, right through the center of the state. This is going to be an unprecedented flood event. And let me change our perspective here one more time and talk about kind of this northern side of the storm here. There's the track over the next 24 hours, that red line there. And what is happening here is that there is a tremendous amount of rain that is going to be just basically stationary, even though it's moving to the west, because as the hurricane's moving along, it's kind of reinforcing the rain. So basically all of central Florida here is going to have up to 2 feet of rain, which, as I said, about when Puerto Rico had the rain from Earl, it's going to be bad in terms of rainfall. So there's the line, and there's the storm moving to the northeast there. Our tornado threat continues here in South Florida. It wasn't Earl, it was Fiona, wasn't it, that had that hit Puerto Rico. So our flood threat continues here in South Florida, but I think our main threat is kind of shifting over a little bit now to more of the very gusty winds in the squalls, as well as we still have a tornado threat, especially over the mainland of southeast Florida. As you go west, the conditions deteriorate very, very quickly now as the center there is working its way to the coast. That is a 3-hour loop. Let me zoom in here to a 1-hour loop. And was kind of a bad night in the Keys, been a stormy morning in the Keys, and the storms continue there. Folks, you guys are all welcome. It's kind of, I feel like it's the least I could do, and there's always me being the director, producer, writer, and also on camera. So that's kind of a little bit of a challenge. It's a one-man band. Has the threat for severe squalls like the one we saw last night caused any damage at North Perry Airport gone down? I would say it's gone down. It's not zero, because sometimes the storm will have different feeder bands that come alive. But as you can see here, for the time being, the severe weather has pushed north of Miami-Dade, Broward, as well as it's kind of hugging Palm Beach there. So let's zoom in on that, and you can see some pretty good storms lifting up there. So that's there's still a possibility. In fact, let me change the radar presentation here. It kind of tracks more severe weather, and we'll see. Okay, so we do have a tornado warning that's up in so eastern Palm Beach County. So severe weather is still in Palm Beach County there. There's West Palm Beach under a tornado warning this morning for about another 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And those bigger cells right now are just offshore of Broward and Miami-Dade. So those would be the potentially tornadic cells that are lifting to the north there, just offshore. But we can't rule out that some more of this stuff comes alive here, especially these bands here that are kind of working their way up to the north. They could come alive, and we could see tornadoes, brief tornadoes with those as well. And there, the core, a lot of lightning in the core overnight and this morning. And I do want to show you, this because I was looking at this water vapor loop here. And the storm is producing what we call gravity waves, which are these pressure oscillations in the atmosphere. And there are actual sensors, very, very low frequency sensors that can hear this from thousands of miles away, because the storm is so intense right now. And if you look carefully, it almost looks like somebody has dropping like something in the water. You see these like shock waves kind of radiating out away from the hurricane there, because it's just so intense that it's literally sending shock waves out into the atmosphere. You can see the dry air that's starting to try to push into the west side, but because Ian has become so large, it's kind of fending itself off from some of this shear. But also, as I said yesterday, the storm is going to become increasingly lopsided because that shear is kind of pushing against Ian there, and it's forcing the rainfall distribution to blow off to the east there a little bit. If you look closely there, it almost looks like there's some wobbles. What you're seeing here is that parts of the eyewall are exposed, so it looks more wobbly on the satellite picture than it does on the radar. But certainly some shear is going on there as it's moving to the north. Let's see what else. Sitting in flood 1 in St. Pete with the options to drive north. My place is 12 feet above sea level. As the forecast Song goes, should I stay or should I go now? Wow, so in St. Petersburg, let's zoom in there and talk about St. Petersburg, Pinellas County, of course. And you are, of course, in the rain now. Let's see, your place is 12 feet above sea level. I think you're going to be okay at 12 feet above sea level. I don't think the storm surge forecast earlier at its highest was 10 feet above sea level. So hopefully you have, provisions there to kind of wait out the power outages that I think you're going to see. And it's going to be hard to get around for maybe a few days in the Tampa Bay area. And not so much from the storm surge at this point, but from the rainfall flooding. I think the flooding is going to be I think it's a little unexpected in terms of the rainfall flooding across the West Coast, but the rainfall flooding is going to be a big event there. So good question, good questions from everybody this morning. You guys are more awake than I am. Let's see, any more questions? Nope, that's about it so far. So good. So let's kind of take a little tour around the state. There is Central Florida, the I-4 corridor there, going on over to Orlando, Lakeland, where the Aircraft Operations Center for NOAA that houses the NOAA planes and the NOAA hurricane hunters, they pulled out of Lakeland and relocated in Houston, got all of their aircraft out of there because you can't operate investigating a hurricane when there's a hurricane over you. So Polk City there, Polk County on to the east, Osceola and Orange counties also getting this. Now the tornado threat's going to be increasing in Central Florida as well. You can see these bigger squalls now are coming up out of Palm Beach County and moving on into Martin and St. Lucie counties. And so that severe thunderstorm threat is going to be increasing this morning. The tornado warning, by the way, that little ping in the background, that tornado warning for Palm Beach County looks like it was canceled. Let me just check on that real quickly because I know folks are watching in Palm Beach too. Yeah. So that tornado warning for Palm Beach County has been canceled. A new flood statement has been issued from the Storm Prediction Center for Central and South Florida. Let me see if I can find that. And we'll pop that up and talk about that for a second. And folks, if you have more questions, feel free to ask, because we're in what I call the baked in the cake phase, which means there's not going to be any big surprises. There's not going to be any big shifts. There's not going to be any big wobbles. Big wobbles. It's not going to hook to the left or hook to the right. The intensity is not going to suddenly change. This is all just now unfolding. We're to that stage where things that could change and things that could happen are not going to be changing that much, except for the fact that the storm is going to be coming ashore. The Eyewall is going to be coming ashore, and the weather is going to get extremely bad, extremely quick as the Eyewall comes ashore. So here's that's what they call mesoscale discussion. So let's take a look at that. It's from the Storm Prediction Center there, from the Weather Prediction Center, WPC. And they're saying rainfall rates of 2 to 3 inches per hour expected to continue. All of the Keys, all of Central and South Florida, including Palm Beach, Miami-Dade, and Broward. So their anticipation is, their thinking is that this rainfall band, these bands that are extending down to the south here, they are going to increase as the day goes on. And the thing also is that as the storm is moving to the northeast, what's going to happen is that these bands are no longer going to be kind of radiating across South Florida, but they're going to start to parallel South Florida. So on the side of the hurricane, as the hurricane is moving to the northeast, those bands are going to not be moving as quickly out of areas, which is going to cause additional flooding there. No tornado warnings right now, so that's good. In South Florida, I haven't seen any tornado warnings anyplace else as of right now, so that's good for the moment. If there's kind of looking for good news here, if there's good news, maybe that's some good news that the tornado activity has calmed down for the moment. But we are under a tornado watch until 5 p.m. today, so the tornado threat is still there. I think there'll be more damage from storm surge flooding or wind damage in Southwest Florida. In other words, is there more of a flood or a wind event? So when you get into this category 4, so basically the way the categories work, and this is from the original Saffir-Simpson scale, and Herb Saffir was and I can't remember Mr. Simpson's last name, but they were a team, and they looked at structural impacts from hurricanes, and they said that at this wind speed we get this type of damage, at this wind speed we get this type of damage. And they found that from category 3 and above, that's where you start getting structural damage, significant structural damage to buildings, where you lose roofs, you lose the gable ends, the kind of the triangle part of the end of homes and things like that. And that's why we call category 3 and higher major hurricanes, because they do major damage. And we're past category 3, we're into the category 4 now level, and the damage is even higher because the sustained winds are high enough now that they're over 130 miles an hour, and then you have gusts above that. So I think in this case, for those that are going to be impacted by the core of the hurricane, it's going to be much more about the wind, because the wind is going to tear everything apart. The flood threat is very real with that as well, but I mean, it's kind of a toss-up. Once your home has been severely damaged and you're dealing with flood, it's just almost like insult to injury there. The flood threat outside of where the core is going to be significant. And so for the folks that are able to not have a lot of damage there, up in through central Florida here, basically the I-4 corridor and just south of where the core goes, or just west and north of where the core goes as well, that flood area is going to be significant, and it's going to be basically kind of life stopping in the way that you're going to have to just stay put until the waters go down. So this is as I was talking last night, this is kind of like all of the hazards combined in kind of their worst way. This is kind of what you would think almost as a worst case scenario. If you were to model something and say, what can we do to make it really, really bad? This is what you plan for at the upper end, unfortunately. What are the chances it continues off the coast and goes towards Tampa? So it did wobble to the left. I'll show you that. Now we had those wobbles, kind of that whole track shift was going to the right, but there was this little wobble to the left here, or almost a jog to the left there, as the Hurricane Center said. So it kind of did that, and then it resumed this northwest motion. It could make a few more of those wobbles, and it's not out of the possibility. And I did this a little bit earlier. Let me show this again. If you extrapolate the left side of the Eyewall, which is right there, and you run it parallel to the forecast track, you can see that it's possible that Tampa gets into high-end hurricane winds, at least a good part of Hillsborough County, as well as Manatee County and Sarasota County. So that's not a out of the question situation. Now, the thing is that on the north side of the storm, of course, the winds are going that way, which is offshore flow. So in that case, you would expect Tampa Bay to be drawn down where the water levels drop, like we saw in Irma. Problem is that once the storm gets past and the storm is here with its circulation like that, then the winds are going to start coming back in, and the water's going to come back in. Is there going to be as much storm surge after the storm is past Tampa? I don't think so, as was earlier forecast, but there's still going to be some storm surge there. And we're seeing the drawdown already in Charlotte Harbor. So Charlotte Harbor is right here, and so the winds kind of are blowing parallel to the coast, but I think the surge is going to start coming in here pretty soon, and it's going to be pretty severe, unfortunately. So that's that for the folks in Tampa. Folks in Lakeland and Orlando, this is going to be bad. I hope you're prepared for power outages and staying put potentially for days before you can really get out. And let me just remind everybody, because we're kind of getting into this countdown here of where the storm comes, and then you start losing communications and stuff like that. If you haven't already, try to make a communication plan with people you know outside of the storm area. Let them know what your intentions are when the storm hits, and what you're going to be doing after the storm hits. And let them know if they don't hear from you by a certain point of time, which may be 5 days, because I think the infrastructure is really going to be crushed here, to let the authorities know that you haven't heard from them. Now, not the authorities in South Florida, but the authorities at your location. So if you're in Georgia watching and you haven't heard somebody in Florida that you've got the communication plan with, this isn't just people you know. This is where you've got the established communication plan. You've already said, I'm going to be going through the storm. It's going to be bad. If you don't hear from me in 5 days, please let somebody know, because it means that I've been kind of cut off here and maybe nobody's found me yet. Now, the good thing is that because we're good with getting National Guard and help in right away, quick response behind the storm, we can get portable cell towers up. So make sure your cell phones are charged. Make sure you have like backup batteries and things like that. After the storm, if you have a generator, make sure you have a carbon monoxide detector and you use it. Be very, very careful with generators. We have a very large number of fatalities after a storm. In some cases, more people die after a storm than during a storm from carbon monoxide poisoning. The other thing is everybody, especially in the damage area, needs to be really, really careful, because the resources are going to be extremely, extremely thin to come and help you should you get injured or something like that. So I always say the number one rule after the storm is be careful. Be very careful. Don't get out there with the chainsaw right away. There are an unbelievable number of chainsaw fatalities, which is insane to think about, that somebody is using a chainsaw and they end up cutting an arm or a leg or something. So you just have to be careful after the storm has passed. Number one fatality age group is men over 60. So guys, I'm 60, so guys over 60. It's not like when we were in 40, so you can't just get out there and start lifting branches and palm fronds and moving things around and stuff like that after the storm. You've got to really take it easy. Other fatality category is heart attacks. Heart attacks because people are doing too much after the storm. So that's kind of the phrase there. And we're kind of getting to this phase here now where we're kind of warning people, because there's not going to be much movement. It's getting harder and harder to evacuate and things like that. We're getting to this phase here now where we're talking about what to do during the storm and what to do after the storm. So during the storm, you're going to want to be in an interior room. You're going to want to be away from windows. You're going to want to close all of the doors of your house. I spoke with a structural engineer, it was last year, in the spring actually, who does post-hurricane structural analysis. And they found that if you close your doors, because what you're trying to do at all costs is keep the wind from coming inside the house. Now, if your roof starts to come off, you can't keep the wind from coming in. But to a point, the shutters keep the windows from breaking and keeps the wind out. And when I said to a point, no, the shutters do keep the windows from breaking. But to a point, you can keep the wind out unless your roof starts to come off a bit. But closing the doors, if one window breaks in one part of the house, then at least you're keeping the wind from getting through the rest of the house and the pressure there. So there's an exponential increase in power as categories increase in terms of the wind. So, and I always have to think about this, and Harry, I appreciate the question, because the force of wind is tremendous. And so I think it goes like this. So Harry, maybe you can explain it since you asked the question, because I think you already know the answer, but everybody knows that wind has a lot of power with it. And as it increases, like, so when you go from 20 to 40, you're not doubling the wind power there, you're increasing it exponentially by a factor, by a magnitude. So sorry, Harry, I've been working this for days, and my math side of my brain is still asleep this morning due to lack of sleep. So the water also has a great deal of force. That's why we say you have to get out of the the water, the evacuation zones. If you're in an evacuation zone, especially this is going to be true for Port Charlotte, for Fort Myers area, storm surge is going to be a big deal. The other areas you evacuate in or should have evacuated from are mobile homes. Mobile homes just aren't going to stand up to this kind of wind here. So let's talk a little bit more about during the storm. Stay away from the windows, of course. Don't use candles. If it's getting dark, use flashlights because you don't want a fire or the wind or something to knock something over. In anticipation of power outages, make sure that if you're cooking and the power goes out, you turn off the stove. We do have every now and then some house fires that occur because people were cooking as the storm was approaching, the power went out, and then they forgot to turn off their stove. The stove came back on and caught the house on fire. Other things to remember, let's see, there's kind of some common sense things because the storm is going to be reaching the west coast during the day but moving up the coast at night, so more into central Florida towards Orlando. You want to pre-position your flashlights because you might have power for a while and then the power goes out when it's already dark. And looking outside of my house here in West Broward, it's pretty windy, Let me check some of the wind speeds here and see what we're seeing this morning here. So yeah, gusting to 30 in West Kendall. Homestead didn't report this hour. At Miami International Airport, gusting to 37. Opelika gusting to 33, 30 in Pembroke Pines, 38. Fort Lauderdale Airport gusting to 35 in Pompano Beach. So yeah, blowing pretty good, 32 in West Palm Beach. Naples right now is southeast at 26, gusting to 51 miles an hour, and it's going to get worse. The pressure's falling rapidly there. Fort Myers, east at 21, gusting to 40. And let's see, our Fowey Rocks, which is our reef light southeast of Key Biscayne, is not reporting some of the other wind gusts here. So the loop current buoy, which is over in the Gulf of Mexico, very close to the storm, is northwest, so that's on the other side of the storm, so it's getting the northwest wind, and it's over here, northwest at 54 knots, so that's about 60 miles an hour, gusting to 72, so that's about 80 miles an hour. I don't think that buoy reports the wave height. There's what's called a pulley ridge buoy, which is in the southeast Gulf as well. It's reporting 25-foot seas, waves of 25 feet over there in the Gulf. So this obviously is going to it's really going to be a big wave maker and coastal erosion event. This is really going to chew up and tear up the coast along the west coast of Florida. Storm surge usually does, and on top of that, Category 4 hurricane coming on shore. Not good at all. So that's kind of the latest where we stand this morning. I think with the 11 a.m. We'll just go continuous because the core is going to be getting very close to the coast. If you know people in southwest Florida, basically anywhere from Naples and Marco Island up the coast there through Bonita Springs, Immokalee, LaBelle, Fort Myers, Captiva, Sanibel, let's see, on up the coast there, Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda, and then even inland too. A lot of folks don't remember, unfortunately, that Arcadia really suffered greatly when Charlie went kind of up US 17 there. There's Arcadia. You can see right in the middle of the screen, and there's US 17 there. So Arcadia, Sebring is going to really take the brunt of this as well. And then more of an offshore flow into Manatee County. Sarasota, this is going to be very devastating for Sarasota as well as it moves to the northeast. So basically that's it for our morning update. Once again, we'll start again here about 10:45. We'll get the 11 a.m. advisory. And at this point, once again, it's like I said, it's kind of baked into the cake of there's not going to be any sudden changes. It's not going to suddenly jump left or jump right. It's not going to suddenly decrease in intensity. All of this is going to just unfold, unfortunately, and it's unfortunately going to unfold in a very bad way. So we will see you back here this morning at about 10:45. Thanks for joining us this morning.